Flash, savior of the universe. Flash Gordon wasn't just a campy sci-fi romp with neon colors and a pounding Queen soundtrack. It was a chaotic, unpredictable, and sometimes dangerous production that teetered between genius and disaster. Behind the camp spectacle lay bruised egos, lost tempers, bizarre casting choices, and some truly wild on-set mishaps. Today, we're pulling back the curtain with 20 weird facts about Flash Gordon you didn't know. From drug-fueled cast antics to a studio system that nearly abandoned the film mid-shoot, the truth is stranger than the fiction on screen. And wait until you hear the bonus fact: it involves a shocking Hollywood legend who secretly shaped the film in ways audiences never realized. Let's dive in. Dino De Laurentiis bought the rights to spite George Lucas. Before Star Wars changed cinema forever, George Lucas actually tried to make Flash Gordon. He approached King Features Syndicate in the mid-70 seconds, hoping to adapt Alex Raymond's legendary comic strip. But Dino De Laurentiis, the flamboyant Italian producer known for King Kong, 1976, swooped in and purchased the rights. Why? Reportedly out of pure spite. He had no clear plan, but he wanted to control what Lucas couldn't. Ironically, Lucas went on to make Star Wars instead, and its success pressured De Laurentiis into finally fast-tracking Flash Gordon. Not because he believed in it, but because he wanted a piece of the same sci-fi gold rush. Without Lucas's rejection, Star Wars and Flash Gordon might have swapped destinies, and audiences would have seen a very different galaxy far, far away. Sam J. Jones and De Laurentiis stopped speaking mid-filming. Sam J. Jones, the ex-football player cast as Flash, quickly clashed with producer Dino De Laurentiis. Jones accused De Laurentiis of reneging on payment promises, while De Laurentiis saw Jones as unprofessional. By the time shooting wrapped, they weren't even on speaking terms. Post-production became a nightmare. Jones refused to return for crucial dubbing sessions, forcing producers to hire another voice actor to redub parts of Flash's dialogue. Imagine the star of your movie being literally voiced over because the lead actor walked away. That decision gave Flash's performance an oddly uneven quality, a jarring detail some fans still notice today. It wasn't just a clash of egos, it was the producer essentially erasing the actor who embodied the role. Queen wrote the score in a creative frenzy. When De Laurentiis first approached Queen to score Flash Gordon, they were skeptical. A campy space opera, but after seeing a rough cut, Freddie Mercury and Brian May dove in headfirst. In just weeks, they crafted the bombastic rock opera score that made the film iconic. Legend has it, Queen barely slept during recording sessions, layering guitars and synths to mimic cosmic chaos. Brian May later recalled, "We treated it as if Flash was one long Queen song. The wild pace showed whole sections were improvised to visuals. Not only did it reinvent how a rock band could score a film, it paved the way for more experimental soundtracks in the 1,980 seconds. Without Queen's contribution, the movie might have slipped into obscurity. Instead, its music became immortal. Max von Sydow nearly collapsed in the costume. Max von Sydow, who played Ming the Merciless, endured brutal conditions. His costume weighed nearly 70 pounds, with stiff metallic pieces and a massive headpiece that cut off circulation. During long takes under hot studio lights, von Sydow nearly fainted multiple times. Crew members reportedly had to carry ice packs to press against him between takes. At one point, he collapsed in the makeup chair after hours of shooting. The irony? Ming was supposed to exude effortless power and cruelty, but the actor portraying him was suffering silently, weighed down by costume excess. Von Sydow later admitted the role was one of the most physically demanding of his career, not because of the acting, but because the wardrobe was torture disguised as glamour. Ornella Muti's injury was covered up. Italian actress Ornella Muti, who played Princess Aura, suffered a serious accident on set. During a scene involving Ming's palace, she reportedly slipped on slick tiles and fractured her nose. Instead of halting production, the injury was downplayed, and makeup teams worked overtime to cover swelling and bruising. Muti soldiered on, filming scenes in pain, because De Laurentiis refused to delay the schedule. What audiences saw as flawless beauty was actually a woman acting through an untreated injury. The cover-up is rarely discussed, but it highlights the darker side of old Hollywood production values, where female actors were often pushed past breaking points for the sake of staying on budget and keeping appearances. Behind every glittering close-up was a painful reality. The sets were constantly falling apart. The dazzling, over-the-top sets of Flash Gordon looked like pure space fantasy on screen, but behind the camera, they were barely holding together. The elaborate designs, drenched in gold and neon, were built quickly to meet De Laurentiis' tight schedule. Corners were cut, literally. Crew members recalled whole sections wobbling during fight scenes. One stunt performer described swinging on a rope only to feel the entire backdrop shudder like cardboard. Even the throne room of Ming the Merciless reportedly lost panels mid-shoot, forcing editors to crop frames creatively. It wasn't Hollywood magic, it was smoke, mirrors, and last-minute patchwork. For actors, it meant performing inside a fragile fantasy world that could literally collapse with one wrong step. The fragility of those sets mirrored the instability of the entire production. What audiences saw as opulence was often nothing more than painted plywood and hope. Timothy Dalton took his role deadly. Seriously, Timothy Dalton, years before his stint as James Bond, played Prince Baron with Shakespearean intensity. While many actors leaned into the camp, Dalton treated his character as if he were performing Hamlet. He memorized entire sections of the comic strips and reportedly corrected fellow cast members on Baron's lore. Dalton refused to wink at the camera or soften his delivery, insisting the only way the madness would work is if he played it absolutely straight. This created tension with other actors who were embracing the sillier tone. Yet Dalton's approach gave the film balance. His seriousness made the absurdity around him feel even more outrageous. Without his grounding performance, the movie might have collapsed into pure parody. Instead, Dalton's commitment gave it texture. It wasn't camp alone. It was camp counterbalanced by unexpected gravity. The Hawkman's flight was pure torture. The Hawkman sequences remain iconic, but filming them was grueling. Actors were strapped into massive harnesses, suspended by wires for hours. The heavy wings, made of reinforced fiberglass and feathers, cut into their shoulders. Brian Blessed, who played Prince Voltan, admitted that some extras nearly fainted mid-air from lack of circulation. Crew members had to rush ladders underneath suspended actors to prevent accidents. And still, performers were asked to smile, shout, and swing maces convincingly. Blessed later joked that the pain was worth it because the sequence became glorious madness. Yet for many stunt doubles, it was pure agony. What looked like thrilling aerial battles on screen was, in reality, a test of endurance that left bruises, rope burns, and scars long after cameras stopped rolling. The spectacle came at a brutal human cost, hidden beneath the feathers. The dialogue was constantly rewritten on set. The film's script was chaotic, rewritten almost daily. Director Mike Hodges admitted he often received new dialogue hours before shooting. Some days, call sheets arrived with blank sections because writers hadn't finished revisions. Actors like Sam J. Jones and Ornella Muti grew frustrated, feeling their characters lacked consistency. Even Max von Sydow, a veteran of Bergman films, complained he couldn't prepare properly because he never knew what Ming would say next. Hodges reportedly leaned into the absurdity, encouraging improvisation when pages ran out. This lack of stability gave the movie its peculiar, dreamlike, rhythm lines feel disconnected, as if characters are in different films entirely. What audiences perceive as campy exaggeration was often just survival, actors filling gaps left by unfinished writing. The disjointed script didn't just create chaos, it created the movie's bizarre, otherworldly tone. Brian Blessed nearly died, filming his own stunt. Brian Blessed, known for his booming voice and boundless energy, insisted on doing many of his own stunts as Prince Vultan. During one dangerous sequence, he leapt forward while strapped to a faulty wire rig. The mechanism malfunctioned, sending him plummeting onto part of the set. Blessed survived, but he was badly bruised and narrowly avoided serious injury. Instead of halting, he roared with laughter, reportedly shouting, "I'm immortal, Ming." The crew was shaken, but Blessed's bravado kept the cameras rolling. This near disaster became legend among castmates, reinforcing his reputation as unstoppable. Yet it also underscored the risky shortcuts being taken behind the scenes. Not even the most exuberant actor was safe from shoddy safety measures. Blessed's brush with danger gave the film raw intensity, but it could have ended in tragedy. Director Mike Hodges was hired last minute. Mike Hodges, who had directed the gritty British crime film Get Carter, was an odd choice for a flamboyant space opera. And here's the twist he wasn't even supposed to direct. Nicholas Roeg was originally attached, and he wanted to create a surreal, philosophical adaptation of Flash Gordon, but Roeg's vision was deemed too strange, and he walked away. De Laurentiis then called in Hodges just weeks before filming. Hodges admitted later he was totally unprepared. "I didn't understand the script, and I had no prep time." He directed by instinct, improvising daily. That lack of planning gave the movie its chaotic, patchwork feel. What audiences see as deliberate camp was often the product of a director who didn't have time to impose order. Hodges turned chaos into cinema, almost by accident. The costumes were a fire hazard. The movie's lavish costumes, dripping with sequins and metallic fabrics, looked dazzling, but they were death traps under studio lights. Several were made of flammable materials not suited for hot set conditions. During one sequence, an extra's robe actually caught fire when it brushed too close to a light rig. Crew members rushed in with extinguishers before disaster struck. Ornella Muti's flowing gowns were especially dangerous, tangling with set pieces and electrical cables. Actors had to be constantly reminded to move slowly, despite action-packed choreography. It wasn't just the weight of the costumes, it was the constant fear that one spark could ignite the entire set. Every glamorous shot of gold and glitter carried with it the silent terror of potential catastrophe. The beauty audiences admired came at the razor's edge of disaster. Sam J. Jones walked off the set before filming ended. The conflict between Sam J. Jones and producer Dino De Laurentiis escalated so badly that Jones actually walked off set before filming wrapped. The official excuse was contract disputes, but cast members claimed Jones was fed up with verbal abuse and unfair treatment. As a result, body doubles had to fill in for him in several key sequences. His face is barely visible in some shots because it isn't him, it's a stand-in. The decision also fueled the dubbing controversy since Jones refused to return for ADR. Imagine being the star of your film and leaving before it's even finished. That rupture left scars on the production, and it's one reason a planned sequel never materialized. Flash Gordon didn't just save the universe, he barely survived his own movie. Extras were paid in beer. The film required armies of background performers for Ming's court, the Hawkmen Army, and Mongo's citizens. The budget ballooned so badly that De Laurentiis reportedly began cutting corners. Instead of properly paying all the extras, some were compensated with beer, sandwiches, or promises of tickets to the premiere. Many extras were Italian locals with no acting experience, drafted into the chaos simply because they were available. The result? Dozens of background performers wandered the set confused, unsure of cues. If you watch closely, some extras can be seen laughing or staring directly at the camera, breaking immersion. What appears to be deliberate camp is often just underpaid workers enduring long, exhausting days in uncomfortable costumes fueled by little more than bread, beer, and the promise of fleeting movie magic. Ornella Muti was nearly blinded by a prop. During a torture scene, Ornella Muti's Princess Aura was strapped into a bizarre machine with glowing elements and sharp protrusions. One of those props malfunctioned, snapping loose and striking her dangerously close to the eye. Crew rushed in, and Muti reportedly broke down in tears, furious that safety protocols had been ignored. The incident was hushed up quickly, with filming resumed the same day. Had the strike landed slightly differently, she might have suffered permanent eye damage. It was a stark reminder that behind the campy visuals, actors were being put in very real danger. The audience saw only melodrama, but for Muti, the scene left emotional and physical scars. Her beauty was framed as untouchable on screen, but in reality, it was constantly at risk. The film nearly got an X rating in the US. It might be hard to imagine now, but Flash Gordon almost earned an X rating from the MPAA. The problem wasn't violence, it was the film's overt sexuality. Princess Aura's torture scene, Clytus's grotesque death, and the lingering shots of scantily clad extras pushed censors to the edge. De Laurentiis reportedly fought tooth and nail, trimming frames to satisfy the board. Costume choices were also toned down in certain sequences, especially where cleavage and suggestive choreography dominated the screen. The irony? What looks like harmless camp to modern eyes was considered borderline obscene in 1980. If the cuts hadn't been made, Flash Gordon might have been doomed to art house obscurity rather than gaining cult fame. It's a reminder that camp often walks a razor's edge between comedy and controversy. The sparkle nearly blinded the censors. Brian Blessed claimed the Queen soundtrack saved the film. Brian Blessed, never shy with his opinions, once declared, "Without Queen, Flash Gordon would have sunk without trace." And he wasn't wrong. The cast reportedly watched early dailies without the music, and the movie felt painfully slow and awkward. But once Queen's score was layered in, the energy transformed. Suddenly, awkward dialogue felt like operatic camp, and slow sequences burst with adrenaline. Freddie Mercury's voice elevated cardboard sets into intergalactic arenas. Even critics who panned the acting and script singled out the soundtrack as revolutionary. The movie wasn't just saved by rock music, it was reborn. Without that pulsating beat and those anthemic choruses, the movie might have vanished as a forgotten relic. Instead, it became a cult sensation, its music echoing louder than its flaws. The script was originally meant to be dead serious. What audiences got was psychedelic camp, but the earliest drafts of Flash Gordon were dark, serious, and even grim. Screenwriter Lorenzo Semple Jr., best known for his work on the 1960 Seconds Batman series, had written versions that were much closer to Star Wars in tone. De Laurentiis, however, pushed for more camp after Lucas's success, believing parody would set his film apart. Director Mike Hodges leaned into the absurd, encouraging over-the-top line deliveries and ridiculous visuals. That shift divided the cast. Timothy Dalton fought for seriousness, while Brian Blessed embraced the madness. The result was tonal whiplash, but it worked. The film lives in that uneasy space between parody and sincerity. What could have been a generic space opera instead became a glittering, eccentric oddity that still sparks debate today. It was a surprise hit in the UK, not the US. When Flash Gordon premiered in America, it underperformed. Critics mocked its camp style, and audiences dismissed it in the shadow of The Empire Strikes Back. But in the UK, it was a phenomenon. The The film ran for months in British theaters, boosted by Queen's involvement and Brian Blessed's larger-than-life performance. British audiences embraced the absurdity, treating it almost like a rock concert experience. In fact, decades later, Flash Gordon still regularly screens in the UK to sold-out, sing-along crowds. What failed to ignite Hollywood found immortality overseas. It wasn't an American blockbuster, it was a British cult classic. That cultural divide shows how perception can reshape legacy. The same film, mocked in one country, became a beloved treasure in another, proving camp thrives where audiences crave spectacle. A planned sequel was abandoned after Chaos. De Laurentiis originally planned for Flash Gordon to launch a franchise. Early marketing even hinted at sequels. But after clashing with Sam J. Jones, runaway costs, and mixed box office returns, the dream evaporated. Sets were dismantled, costumes sold off, and Jones was blacklisted from returning. A script for Flash Gordon 2 reportedly existed, involving Mongo's invasion of Earth, but it was shelved permanently. For years, fans speculated about a revival, but the bad blood between producer and star made it impossible. Instead, the movie lived on through reruns, comic adaptations, and eventually cult midnight screenings. What was meant to rival Star Wars became a one-hit wonder, an accident of history. The sequel never came, but maybe that's why the original feels so unique. It's a glittering one-off, preserved in amber. Federico Fellini almost directed it. Here's the shocker. Before Hodges or even Rogue, Italian master director Federico Fellini was in talks to direct Flash Gordon. Fellini, famous for surreal classics like 8½, and La Dolce Vita, was obsessed with the original comic strip. He even collected Flash Gordon memorabilia as a child. But negotiations collapsed, and the project shifted to De Laurentiis' circle. Imagine what that version might have looked like: an art house fever dream of cosmic decadence, mixing satire, surrealism, and opera. Fellini's vision would have been radically different, likely incomprehensible to mainstream audiences, but unforgettable. The fact that Flash Gordon came so close to being a Fellini masterpiece is perhaps its strangest secret of all. What we got was chaos. What we almost got was legend. Flash Gordon wasn't just a movie. It was a battlefield of egos, accidents, and wild artistic swings. What looked like glitter and camp hid broken contracts, dangerous stunts, and near misses with disaster. And yet, from the wreckage, something magical survived, a cult phenomenon still adored 4 decades later. So, next time you hear that thunderous Queen anthem, remember, it wasn't just a song. It was the heartbeat that kept a broken production alive. If you loved these secrets, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Because as Flash himself proved, sometimes saving the universe means surviving the madness of making a movie.